Hey everyone, welcome back to the Castaway Consultants, where we teach future Survivor players how to play the game by criticizing current players. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Stacy, the magnificent Ryan Stacy even, and I'm joined by my two other almost as magnificent co-hosts, Derek Kubicek.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Josh Wessler.
Hey, hello.
We just got done watching the 10th episode of Survivor 42, which is called Tell a Good Lie, Not a Stupid Lie. Good life advice from Survivor episode titles. What'd you guys think of the episode?
I was really, really pleased with this episode. Even if it wasn't very tense, it doesn't always need to be. Sometimes it's just a really good episode with a lot of really good gameplay that leads to a very logical conclusion. And I feel like maybe the body of this episode, the innards, the inner workings were probably the strongest that we've seen all season. We've had some really fun tribals. We've had some, blow-ups back at camp. And then, of course, there's like finding advantages, finding idols, the Beware stuff that's been fun. Jonathan beasting a couple challenges. But like the strategy portion of the middle of this episode was my favorite part by far. And I loved pretty much all of it.
Yeah, it was good. I was a little confused in there just because it seemed like it was a very obvious vote. And usually when Survivor does that, it doesn't end up being that way. And tonight it was. So it seemed like it was not tense whatsoever. There wasn't really a whole lot of speculation as to what was going on. And everything else other than that, though, was really good. I thought, like Derek said, good strategy. Challenges were nice and intense, all that stuff. And the end result was A-okay.
We'll talk about that in a second. It was a pretty straightforward episode, I'd say, which is actually kind of refreshing because we don't get a ton of that on Survivor anymore. So I appreciated that. It was just like, yeah, we know who's going. They tried to make us think it was someone else for a second, but it's like, nah.
I mean, they could have tried harder. Like it seemed like they didn't really try, even though there had to have been footage there to at least, maybe show less of one particular side of it.
I think that suggests no, they couldn't have done any better.
I agree with Ryan, and I think it's one of the rare times that this was pretty consensus.
Spoiler alert for the episode coming now.
Because they had the, I don't want to call them like the core alliance, but I'll call them like the core block of Lindsay and Omer going to everybody and not telling them, hey, it's going to be High tonight. They're going to them and they ask, do you want Jonathan or do you want High? And they all immediately respond, High.
If they had the footage to make it seem a little more balanced, they would have shown us the footage that made it seem like a little more balanced. I'm guessing this was so cut and dry that they had to force Omer to be like, hey, buddy, can you tell us about who it also could be? Please give us something. That's what I'm guessing is pretty close to what happened.
You know what? I'm just going to. So we already gave our spoiler here. So in my winner pick, rest in peace. But my conclusion from this is that I picked such a good winner pick that it was way too obvious and everyone wanted them to go home because they were too good of a player. So that's really the only logical conclusion that I can come to here. And then we saw it in the edit. Like you said, it was way too obvious. And they couldn't even distract you from the fact that High needed to go because he was just too good.
Josh, I think your name might be spelled L-A-X because you sour grapes there, buddy.
Oh no, I'm not sour. I can accept when I picked the best player in the game, and he just got a little ahead of himself, and you know what? That's fine. He peaked too early. That's all right.
You said L-A-X.
It was like that A-E letter combo thing,
It's L-E-X.
I know it's L-E-X, but I was trying to say L-E-X, but A came out because I guess I'm overly familiar with the airport for whatever reason.
I was just like, what does this have to do with the airport?
A, L-A-X.
Yes, A.
Minnesota, so basically Little Canada. I just want to call attention. This was foreshadowed because High said it himself. The good Survivor players will fold here and the great Survivor players will come through. And Omer came through on that episode. High did not. And here, Omer and Lindsay and Taku prevailed and High was basically unanimously sent home. Shy of one vote that we'll talk about a little bit more down the road.
Mystery weird vote. I do want to point out Taku's got 4 out of the remaining 7. I think I kind of called that like they would be the ones to stick together. I can't remember if you guys were on the same page as me, but I think that was kind of the shot I called.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm gonna give myself all the credit in the world. At the merge episode, I said the Taku Four seemed to be the most tightly aligned, and I said that Ika was a mess and Vati had plenty of issues.
Yep.
So I predicted that Taku Four was going to be able to ride it, or they were at least poised, should they play it right, to ride deep into the merge. So I will give myself the credit. I'm not saying you didn't. I just know that I very much was on Team Taku.
And I will admit I was wrong about Jonathan because I thought he was going to be the merge boot. And then, then last week he won immunity, so it doesn't really count. And then he didn't win it this week, and he didn't go home. So I was dead dog wrong.
Yeah, I'm confused at what's going to end up happening because we're almost borderline on the angle here where he could be brought to the end because you don't think that he's going to win. Like, he has the physical side and like, yeah, people might like him, but there's probably going to be at least one, if not two other choices of people that could go ahead of him. So that'll be an interesting angle if people see it that way, if it's perceived that way on the tribe.
I think the vote that we saw in this episode is very indicative of where the jury's respect is going to go for the games being played. The fact that Jonathan is still around after he lost immunity, being who he is and what he's accomplished physically this season so far, I think is very telling. Like, even for a strong Taku 4 alliance to not, wake up and smell the roses at this, top 8, top 7 opportunity. So, I'm not going to get too ahead of myself, but, maybe spoilers for people who possibly can't win the game.
Who knows?
You guys ready to jump into this thing?
Absolutely.
All right. So the episode begins. Mike is kind of salty about the previous vote, knocking out Roxroy. High convinced him to do it. Mike wasn't thrilled with that. And he talks to Omer about it. And Omer's like, yeah, man, that sucks that you were just like forced into it. And Omer, we get a confessional. He's just like, I was totally fine with Roxroy going home, but I'll play into Mike being mad. I'll bring Mike over to my side and get him away from High.
It's a little bit of a callback when High was talking about, knowing when to drive and when to let other people drive. Because it seems like High was the driver on the last vote, he didn't know when to not be the driver and alienated Mike as a result. And Omer, being the opportunistic son of a gun that he is like, excellent.
I'll take him.
If you're on video, you can see me doing the Mr. Burns hands thing. Excellent.
Lindsay and Omer, they vent a little bit about how Jonathan sucks at the strategic part of the game, and he's like kind of a hindrance to the alliance. And then Marianne finds an idol, which I completely forgot about by the end of the episode.
Yeah, Survivor producers being biased against short people, I guess, because, Lindsay
couldn't find it.
She basically pet it.
Is very short.
Yeah, I know. I'm just making a joke.
So at the reward challenge, Lindsay's going to end up winning. She's going to pick Omer to go on reward and Mike to go on reward because Omer hasn't had any, and Mike's had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But that's her reasoning out loud, which is like a good thing to say. But the more important thing is she's like, I want to have a strategic discussion with these two guys. So I like these picks for Lindsay. She has good rationale behind it, and she covered it up as best she could. So I like the picks.
Yeah, and historically we've said a lot of the time in the post-merge when it's an individual reward, maybe don't win it. Just because it can put a target on your back and alienate people if you bring the wrong people with you to the reward. I feel like in this season you might want to throw that out a little bit because there's other things that come along with it, like sustenance and warmth, just because of how difficult the season has been and how little resources they've been given. So I guess that's fine here.
My big question mark, and I wish I could tell the listeners if it was good or bad. Lindsay picking Omer, like, her rationale's fine because he's never been on reward, but Omer seems to be Lindsay's number one ally. I'm usually a fan of splitting that kind of resource, one at the reward, one on the beach, and maybe bringing along, a Jonathan who's also close with Mike. I like the Mike pick regardless. I think that was a great pick, but maybe bringing along a Jonathan, or maybe bringing along a Marianne. Now, maybe Jonathan's bad because, don't power up the big guy with food. Like, I get that. And I haven't gone through the thought exercise, but I don't love that Lindsay brought her number one. It's just something that I'm not a fan of. And again, Ryan, if I'm ever on Survivor with you, I'm not picking you to go on reward. So
the way I saw it is I think it's perceived that her number one is Jonathan. And so I think if she plays it correctly, because she can have Jonathan stay at camp, that way she doesn't power up the big guy. She could say like, oh, well, my number one is back at camp, keeping an eye on things. So I think you could play it off that way.
And there is way around it. So I'm not going to ding anyone. I think it was as fine of rationale as it could have been, and I don't think it blew up in her face at all. But, just be wary if you're in that situation.
On the reward, they're all just sitting there eating pizza, and all of a sudden we hear voices, like weird, majestic, mysterious voices.
Ghostly apparition.
And I'm like, are we about to go into like a flashback of some kind? What is going on? And they don't know what's going on either. This is bonkers insane. I loved this moment though. And then it turns out it's like a projector playing like the loved ones videos, because we can't do the loved ones visit because COVID, but we get videos this time, which I liked a lot. And so we get the videos. It was just like this weird setup though. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to take a trip to Ghost Island, but I thought that's where we were going.
Survivor 42, Ghost Island for an episode. That's the subtitle for the season.
Spooky Island.
It's
Spookmaster Jeff.
Halloween year-round on Fiji.
Love it. Moving to Fiji. But then the strategic side of things is Omer tells Mike that Hai has been saying like, oh, Mike's my puppet. He'll do anything I want. It's not true, but that's what Omer tells Mike, and Mike falls for this hook, line, and sinker.
Mike is such a sucker.
Well, here's the thing. Omer, and it's in the title of the episode. This is not a stupid lie. This is a lie that is totally believable. Like you could 100% see this being true. And that's what's brilliant about this lie is it may not be true, but the sense of truth surrounds it. And if that's the type of lie you want to pull off. So yeah, well, might be a sucker. As you put it, Josh, the thing is, it makes sense.
Yeah. And I think this almost goes all the way back into the pre-merge when essentially Mike wasn't in the majority of the vote to send someone home. I don't remember who it was already, but they basically had to make amends and basically say like, nope, it's going to be now the four of us going forward, and we have to be strong with our tribe. I bet it goes all the way back to there, and he never actually had like a true. He might have had a little bit of loyalty, but maybe not a true trust in the other people that were remaining on that tribe.
Mike and Hai did not have a day one alliance, so there was that brief period of time where they were on opposite sides. That's true,
and I don't necessarily hate the move for a Mike to, go after a Hai or to even break ties with Hai. I called it, I don't know if it was last episode or 2 episodes ago, where Romeo said that people see Hai as the snake. Not generally someone that you want to go to the end with unless you're confident that you can beat them. And I can see where if he's associated with Hai and it seems like he's riding coattails, which obviously he felt that way, and Omer played that up amazingly. It's good to break ties, but the fact that he seems like he had the wool pulled over his eyes is kind of crazy. So if you're out there, beware of that circular reasoning, because the only reason that worked on Mike is he had already assumed the answer to be true. He assumed that Hai considered himself to be the superior player and that he was in his pocket. And so all Omer needed to do was say it out loud.
Basically validate his feelings.
Exactly. So he kind of fell into his own trap.
Yep.
But that's what a good Survivor player will do to you, proving again that I think Omer is, if not the most, easily top 2 of the most competent Survivor players on the season.
I'd have him as my number 1.
Based on the edit, he's number 1. There's just subtleties out there that I can't see, so I want to leave some some room for wiggle.
I did remember the instance that I was thinking about. It was when it was the tie, the tiebreaker, and Hai basically strong-armed his way into getting Jenny, who was Mike's closest ally out at that time. And I think since that point forward, Mike's kind of just been in an alliance of almost convenience with him. So I bet it was never really a full trusting alliance from his side.
I'm sure it was for a time until Hai showed just how strategic he was. But Lindsay, she tells them both about the amulet that she, Dre, and Hai have, and that it will get more powerful the more people we cut from the amulet group. And if we cut Hai, boom, becomes a skill vote instead of an extra vote. I don't love that Lindsay revealed this information because, if it gets down to one amulet left, that's an idol. So unless you intend to go all the way with these guys and you think you can really trust them, which, you probably can with Mike, I'm a little wary of Lindsay revealing about the amulet.
And because this is the first time that the amulet has even been mentioned, right? Outside of the main three people.
Outside of those
hold
three,
it.
yeah.
I think by revealing this information, Lindsay has said, I am willing to go to the end with you two. You know, it's not a final three alliance in words, but it's Lindsay being willing to say, I will put my game up against your guys's in the finals. And I don't necessarily think that's a good move for her with Omer there, especially because he had, you know, tendrils in the, I guess the minority grouping when the merge first came together. But I do think it is a form of commitment to them at this point. She was able to give them something a little more during this discussion. And I do think that it will prevent, say, Omer from targeting her as one of the stronger competitors left in the game at this point. So I don't hate the move. I generally keep these things to yourself, but if you keep it to yourself and then Drea targets her and gets her out after High is gone, then, you know, it kind of leaves Omer and Mike and company out to dry.
Sure.
So it kind of makes sense. There's logic there. I don't love it.
There's logic there. I don't love it. Yeah, exactly. Lindsay's going to win immunity, though. So really, it's presented to be High versus Jonathan, but it's quickly obvious everyone wants High out. We cut to everyone having conversations, and it's High. Like, Andrea's like, oh, we can power up the amulet. Marianne's on board. Everyone wants him out. But the funniest part is High goes to Jonathan because High wants to make Jonathan comfortable so he doesn't play shot in the dark and says, hey, Jonathan, they're coming for you tonight possibly, but we're going to take out Romeo. And I found the idol, and if I think it's coming for you, I'll play the idol on you and we'll be good. And Jonathan's like, oh, okay. Cut to him talking to Omer, and he's like, yeah, he told me he has the idol and he'll play it on me. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty funny when you get exposed, but I don't hate the move for High. I think, like, you can pretend you have an idol, but obviously his radar was completely off because we don't see him really scramble at all. And I want to actually go back to a moment that we glossed over. So after Lindsay won reward, they all spent a little bit of time back on the beach, and Lindsay suggests to High,
yep,
let's vote out Jonathan tonight. And I turned around. I'm like, you know what? I kind of like that move. You know, give High the perceived snake and a big target right now, something to talk about so that no other schemes come up. And High is just like, it's going to be Jonathan. I kind of like the move. It's dangerous, but I kind of like it.
Here's the problem I have with it is where she did it. They were both sitting at the edge of the shelter. You know who was in the shelter? Jonathan.
Jonathan and Drea. It looked like Drea might have heard something based on the camera angle, but
don't scheme and plot to take out somebody when you're sitting right next to them. That is my advice.
Yeah. So we have a problem with the way it was done, not a problem that it was done.
Exactly. Omer is the one who's going to present us the possible red herring that it could be Jonathan instead. He's like, I have a lot of control over some of these people. I could make it Jonathan instead. And it's like, okay, the producers really, really are desperate for something, aren't they?
For revenge, basically.
I do get the reasoning, though, like, because his reasoning to the camera, whether or not it was real or not, was everyone wants High out. He's not really sitting very well socially, so maybe I should actually pair with him because no one will actually, vote with him at the end. There's something there. Obviously, it wasn't enough to keep him around, which seemed like the right judgment call to make. But, in other instances where you might have a little bit more of an unlikable player, I could totally see where that would come into play.
Yeah, it's assessing what kind of target drew people too High. I think it was because he was very strategic and very vocal and very influential with the goings-on at camp. So I do think that this was threat reduction as much as it was removing an X factor from the game and someone who's not in the core of the alliance per se. So I think that's why it was pretty easy for everyone, like, oh, look at this. High is open and available and vulnerable.
And the thing is, I don't think High was disliked. Maybe by Romeo, maybe a little bit by Mike now.
Sure.
But, Omer's thought process, I use that term loosely.
Air quotes. Again, shout out the video.
would make a lot more sense if High was less well liked, and that's why you obviously they're gonna vote out High. Since High doesn't have a bad social game, not the best social game on the beach, but it's not bad. So I think it does make a lot more sense to vote out High than Jonathan if you're coming at it from that perspective. Tribal Council is a bunch of nothing. It's everyone dodging Jeff's questions. 6 votes for High, 2 votes for Jonathan. Romeo votes for Jonathan, which is really interesting because we did see Omer talking to Romeo, because Omar's the only one who talks to Romeo, it seems like.
Yeah, the only one who strategizes with him anyway.
About the vote. And Romeo's like, I trust you. I'll go either way with you. So that begs the question, was Romeo left out of this vote? Or was it like an insurance policy in case like a shot in the dark or an idol was played? And that's the big question mark that I don't have the answer for.
I think that it is much more likely that it was a strategic move, just because there's been so much just discourse between Romeo and Hai in the past that if Omar is looking at it from the angle of, oh, I need to lie to Romeo because then he might go and snitch to Hai, that doesn't really make sense to me. That nothing has told us that he would that would be implied from that situation. So I bet it was more just a rogue vote, just in case Hai played a shot in the dark and there was really no other option.
You know, I do like that you're bringing that up, though. It's something that I hadn't thought about, because we did just come off of an episode where Hai and Romeo needed to work together. I mean, I guess, you know, they didn't really need Romeo's vote, but they did clue him in on it. So they came off an episode of working together, and Romeo being on the bottom and maybe still going for the win could go blab to Hai. And Hai, being the strategic guy he is, maybe shakes things up around camp. So maybe they did feed him bad information, one, to test loyalty, which I did bring up after the episode, but two, because maybe they really did feel like Romeo's still someone, a player in this game who has nothing to lose. It's my headcanon for now until I have new information. Thank you, Josh.
I think where I'm landing is I think this was, let's say everyone votes for Hai and Hai gets wind of it and plays shot in the dark. No votes. And maybe Romeo's scared that they won't take out Jonathan and just fall on the default bottom player, Romeo. So if I was a betting man, I would bet that Romeo put his vote on Jonathan as an insurance policy in case of shot in the dark. That's what I think. But we do need more information.
And speaking of shot in the dark, Ryan, you and I had a very abridged conversation about whether or not maybe Jonathan should have played it tonight. Given how universally accepted it was that Hai was going home, and Hai being pretty intelligent, you know, knowing that he was kind of Hai's one target, and in case other votes are getting scraped together for him, maybe Jonathan should have just played his shot in the dark tonight. And I think, being who he is, he probably should have.
I won't say he should have, but I wouldn't have been mad if he did.
I see it either way. This does prove that he was clued in correctly, strategically, yep. And that's a positive. But, you know, strictly as a game mechanic, an analog item that you can control, maybe it was better for him to take a shot in the dark here. You know, audience, you decide.
Well, clearly he had the right read on the situation.
Yes, clearly he was right.
Well, I mean, also it was a basically unanimous vote. Like, if you disregard Romeo's vote, it was essentially a unanimous vote. We might not get too many of those going forward. It could be decided by just like one or two votes where your vote really does matter. So if you're going to risk it, maybe do it at a point when it isn't a huge deal if you actually do lose it.
Sure.
Yeah. This definitely did feel like a calm before the storm.
Yeah. So let's talk about whether or not this is the right move, because 6 votes for Hai, 2 votes for Jonathan. I'll start us off. I think this was a fine move for everybody. Except Mike. Mike kind of got tricked into taking out his closest ally. The other thought process I thought of is the Taku 4 are still pretty strong. Like, they are 4 together. But I'm not as mad that the 4 on the bottom didn't come together to take out a Taku member, because there are fractures in the Taku 4. Jonathan was almost kicked off, air quotes. So, you know, you could think about it that way. And I think on a different season, yes, that would be the case. The 4 on the bottom should try and break up the Taku 4, but I think that will be broken up next time. I'm going to predict the Taku person's going out next. So while I don't think this was great for Mike, I think overall it was a great, good move to get rid of Hai.
I think it was good enough. I do think on different seasons of Survivor, we would see maybe a bottom 4 coming together outside of a Taku right now, and at least getting the conversation going. Like, oh man, let's read some writing on the wall. It feels a little bit like Harry Potter too. Like there's blood on the wall right now, and they're warning us.
Chamber of Secrets been opened.
The Chamber of Secrets has been opened.
Oh God, that is definitely a future Survivor twist. Survivor, Chamber of Secrets.
No, Jeff listens to the podcast. Anyway, so I feel like on different seasons, we would have seen someone more scrappy on the bottom come together and try to organize something. We didn't.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with the move, but I mean, and the other thing is that Hai was pretty high up on my people most likely to win. So this checks the box of threat management as well. That's why I'm fine with it. But there needs to be more strategy talk from the bottom.
I don't think it was the right move. Like, it was fine.
Someone's salty.
I completely, and it's not because I'm salty, which I am salty. I'm admittedly salty, but that is not why I'm saying that it probably wasn't the best move. I completely agree that it was fine. Like sure, if you decide to go with high, you take out a threat, you take out someone who, if they make it to the end, they're probably gonna win. Depending on who they go against. But I think that the right move still should have been Jonathan, just because you don't know how people are going to value it come the end of the game. He could absolutely go on a run. He's been at first or second in almost every immunity challenge up to this point, if most of them. So he's at least threatened to win most of the immunity challenges, so he could absolutely go on a run here late in the game. You have, like you said, the entire Taku 4 dilemma, and that really bothers me that no one is talking about it. It's almost like things that we've seen that I won't specifically mention in previous seasons, where you get a couple of people who just slide through the game and stick with a small group of 3 or 4 until they're actually the final group of 3 or 4 remaining. We could have that here this season. And I just don't understand why that's not being talked about actually on TV.
Because I think people like Omer and Lindsay have built up all these relationships, and I don't think they want to do the Taku 4 to the end. So I don't think, because I don't think anybody sees the Taku 4 as going to the end together, except maybe Jonathan. So I think that's why they're not talking about it, because I don't think it's real.
And if it is a thing, they're doing a great job of playing from the top. Omer is one of the best players from the top that I've ever seen, at least based on what I've seen so far. Lindsay also playing from the top, doing very well. Props to both of them.
Especially because Lindsay and Omer have been talking about taking out Jonathan, so I think that's giving everybody some peace.
Yeah, that
they're willing to do it, and they definitely are willing to do it, just about the right time. Every week on Twitter, we ask if the right person went home. So, Josh, why don't you tell us what Twitter thinks?
Because we fell on the side of mostly right.
Yeah, at least Derek and I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said it was the wrong person.
Yeah. Two out of three.
But it's fine, I guess. And Twitter was pretty close to that same ratio. It was actually 60-40, 60% going for yes, the right person went home.
Well, good for Twitter. They're right for once.
Yeah, Twitter agreed. Almost, ratio perfect with us. And they even sided on the correct side, which is, of course, me and Ryan this time.
The 2 best consultants.
Yes.
The 2 who didn't lose their winner pick tonight. Can you imagine if you lost your winner pick in this episode?
Yeah, tonight specifically. Yeah.
Can you imagine making it all the way this far? I can.
Actually, no, I can't.
Nope. Let's get into best and worst player of the episode. Derek, why don't you start us off? Who was the best player of the episode?
So I love the Omer lie, but I'm going to give Lindsay her due credit. She won reward. I liked her pick. She won immunity. And I like the bond that we saw with Drea, where they were bonding over, getting rid of high and powering up their amulet advantage a little bit more. And because she picked Omer and Mike to go on that trip together, they were able to bring Mike solidly into the alliance and get high voted out. So even though I love the lie from Omer, I do think that Lindsay had just as much to do with organizing the troops and getting high voted out. So I give it to Lindsay.
Josh?
I completely see that reasoning, but I feel like I still need to give it to Omer here, just because it feels like he actually is the one who pushed this thing through. The beginning words to convince Mike, which was almost the first domino of the entire situation, was based on what Omer said. Lindsay, it seemed like, I don't know if she even was going to pitch strategy a whole lot. She said that she wanted to talk strategy with them, but what exactly that entailed, we don't really know. It seemed like she was surprised that Omer started bringing up this entire story about high. Maybe it was rehearsed ahead of time. I don't know. But it seemed like Omer had a lot more pressure under this situation.
So I think Omer and Lindsay were great. The thing that breaks the tie for me is Lindsay telling Omer and Mike about the amulet, which I don't love. I could see the logic behind it. I don't love it. So I'm going to use that to bring Lindsay down, push Omer forward, especially with the way he manipulated Mike was just so impressive. So Omer is my best player of the episode.
Yeah, that's a good point. I completely forgot about the amulet.
How about worst player? Josh, you got?
It's the sucker, Mike. Yes, again, I'm still salty, but there weren't really any bad players necessarily in this episode, except for him. Like you said earlier, his number one in high, whether or not he trusted him or not, he still is number one. And I don't think that this would cause High to not give him his vote necessarily. But now you have one less person that you can actually work with really closely and would vote with you. At least he should on every single vote. So good luck dealing with that going forward.
Yeah, it's got to be Mike. He's the last Vati standing now. He took out his closest ally, basically. He got tricked into doing it, and I think everyone else played well. Romeo question mark at this point, but I'm leaning towards Romeo did the right thing. But everyone else, I will say, did the right thing. So that leaves Mike, worst player of the episode.
He got bamboozled. That's all I got for you.
Yeah, bummer. I'm rooting for Mike to win. I want Mike to win this thing, but I gotta give credit where it's due, even if it's bad credit.
I no longer want Mike to win.
Yes, you were so salty.
I always am. This isn't new.
This is the beauty of it.
This is me every single season.
Josh, you lost your winner pick.
That I did.
So, Josh, as is tradition, you get to pick your new winner pick. We have 7 people left in the game. Who do you think is going to win?
I think based on who is the best player remaining in the game, along with Edit, it is probably the most obvious winner that I've seen in a while, and that's Omer. This is the most obvious winner since Tommy. I would be shooketh if he did not win this season. I don't know who else it could be. Maybe Drea has something in there. If something like I could eat, like we got a little bit of Lindsay here this episode, but if that ends up happening, that's almost worse than Erica winning based on like being under edited.
Sure.
Not saying she wouldn't deserve to win by any means, but we haven't seen anything from her, so it's got to be Omer.
All right, so that puts Josh and Derek on Team Omer, and I'm over by myself on Team Romeo. It's not going well.
The dream isn't dead.
Hanging in there, but I don't have high hopes. And you know who else doesn't have high hopes anymore is High.
Oh,
but he had high spirits on his way out.
Yeah, High's exit was excellent.
Ryan, you made a comment saying if you ever got voted out on Survivor, that's how you want to go. Exactly.
I would definitely call everyone the F word very quickly, but then laugh and congratulate them on taking me out. I think, but High is how I would want to be voted out. Just in good spirits, game respect game kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now this begs the question, who is going next with the big caveat? It looks like we're getting the do or die back next episode, which we didn't particularly love last season, but I don't think we hated it just because, at least I didn't hate it because it was presented. It wasn't like a trick. It was clearly laid out and presented for the Castaway. So out of the things they brought back this season, the knowledge is power advantage, the hourglass, and the do or die, this is the one I hate the least of the 3. So whatever. I'm already angry enough for this season. This one's not going to make my blood boil anymore. But that is, I think, going to be in the game next episode, it looks like.
I'm fairly confident in saying that I hated it because anyone who goes home in Survivor that wasn't voted out seems like a complete reversal on what the point of the game is. So I hate do or die. I still hate do or die. But that being said, I'm just going to go into who I think is going home next. I think that it's going to be the do or die. And here's a bold choice for you. I think Drea is going to go home with do or die because she's got all that hardware, but she's been super quiet since the merge, edit-wise, despite the hardware. So I think the pre-merge edit was necessary because of the hardware, and she's been quiet since because she's going to get do or died right out of the game.
I want to make this interesting. I want everyone to pick 2 people who's going next, who gets do or died out, or if no one gets do or died out, who is going to get voted out. So Derek, why don't you, if let's say Drea is going to be the person in the do or die situation, she survives the do or die, who's going home?
I think that Drea will be the one do or died out of the game, but assuming that the do or die person survives, I'm going to guess that Drea steals Mike's idol and Mike goes out of the game.
Gosh, that would break my heart.
You took my hot take from last week. You unoriginal hack.
Except you were wrong, and now I have a chance to be right. So
got him.
Okay.
And you got to remember, I'm actually predicting Dre to go home with do or die. So like this is my secondary take on what's going to
Fine,
happen.
Fine. I'll let you have it.
Oh yeah, you can let me have anything. You lost your winner pick tonight, salty.
Lasted longer than you.
That's true.
Josh, who do you got? Who's going on?
I'd be surprised if someone like Drea lost the do or die, just because if I remember correctly, it was in the challenge whoever was the first one out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she's done a decent job at challenges so far up until this point.
But remember, you can sit out and not compete in the challenge at all.
True.
So it's the first person out of the people who decide to compete in the challenge.
Yeah, good point. I forgot about that part. I do think whoever loses the do or die is going to not be successful in the little trivial challenge that's just essentially luck at tribal council, just because that's what the odds would say. And I think I'm going to go with someone who's been very under-edited post-merge, and I think this is where Romeo goes out. And I think that works well with needing to sit out too, because I bet he wouldn't feel the safest given the last few tribals and seeming like he's on the outs as well. So that makes sense.
All right.
If he does win the do or die, I'm going to go with Jonathan again. Again, I just have to assume, historical context and historical precedent for this entire series of Survivor and needing to get the big physical threat out. That might not be the case this season, and he could go to the end with one vote. But until I see anything else telling me otherwise, I'm going to say that he needs to go.
I think Lindsay's going to be the one taken out by the do or die because she's gotten the least screen time out of everybody left this season. So that's what I think is going to happen. I don't think they would give us much edit on the person who gets screwed by a stupid twist. So I think Lindsay's going to get taken out by the do or die. If she lives, Jonathan, I think, is going. I think they're just going to cut that one. All right, so that brings us to who cannot win the game. There are two of these people who cannot win as of right now, unless there's a surprise final two, but, we're going to assume there's just a final three. I'll go first. The two people I think can't win the game are the two final people left from the Ika tribe, Drea and Romeo. And I haven't really put a ton of, obviously I haven't really thought about how this episode has shaken things up because, we did this right after the episode ended. So this was what I had going into this episode. And I still think my logic is sound because they don't have that solid base of people on the jury. There was a lot of clashing in that Ika tribe. I don't know. Tori doesn't like Drea, and they got issues with Rocks where there just isn't that closeness that really just locks in a bunch of votes for them that the Vati and the Taku tribe might have. So I think that might work against Drea and Romeo. I think Drea would beat Romeo in a final two. I think people like Chanel and Roxroy, who were on the jury for that last tribal council, might like Drea more, but I just don't see a ton of connections for those two in the late game. So I don't think Drea and Romeo can win the game at this point.
I'll agree with Romeo, and I will factor this episode into account. I think them keeping Jonathan sort of spells it out for us that no one is worried about him winning. Everyone keeps talking, like even his own alliance is like, this guy is not smart enough to be an asset to our team, even though he's huge. If you've got your closest ally members talking about you like that behind your back, I can be sure, or I can be as sure as I can be, less than 1% of 1%, that the rest of the tribe and jury probably feel the same. So I'm going to Romeo and Jonathan as unable to win this game.
I'm also going to keep Romeo in there. And the other person I'm going to go with is Mike. I think that he's likable, which is great, but he hasn't really done anything challenge-wise to make him stand out, and he hasn't done anything strategically in order for him to stand out. He's basically followed Hai around, and then once he got upset with Hai, he followed Omer around. So I don't think he'll get much respect in the end based on that. The only other close person would be Jonathan, and I just think that Jonathan has the physical side that would push him over Mike. If you want to argue the people being on the jury angle of it, the only people from his original tribe that are on there are now Hai and Chanel. I don't know if Hai is gonna be petty with that and not give him his vote, but I didn't really see anything that would tell me that Chanel was close with Mike before.
Sure.
So I don't see a whole lot of votes there just from people being buddy with Mike, other than maybe Roxroy.
All right. Well, we'll be interesting to see how this plays out, especially the do or die throwing a wrench in everyone's plans. You can follow us on Twitter at Castaway Pod, Instagram, TikTok, Castaway Consultants. Give us 5-star reviews, please, and thank you. We deserve it because we're awesome.
And I should also shout out our rank downs that we post each week. We were all pretty close on this one, but shout out to Ryan for having his second most likely to go home and being pretty correct on that. Derek had him as his third most likely, and I had him as my fourth most likely. So I did not do very well in my rank downs this week, but Ryan did.
Hashtag Ryan is the best consultant.
I mean, I think you were probably the worst performing up to this point when it comes to rank.
I don't know what you're talking about at all. That's definitely blatantly false.
It's all published.
But that's one of the things that we post on social. So another reason to go follow us there.
Yes. Please and thank you. We appreciate it. Anything else, guys? All right. This has been the Castaway Consultants.
Got nothing else for you.
Good night.